All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're doing more than just studying for the PMP exam. We're going to fundamentally rewire how you approach project problems. This whole thing is about making a crucial shift, moving from being the hands-on technical expert who gets things done to becoming the strategic project manager who makes the right decision.
So let me ask you something. Does this sound familiar? You've got years of on-the-ground, real-world experience. You know your stuff. You can solve any problem thrown at you on site. But then you sit down for the PMP exam, or you're in a big interview and the right answers just feel wrong, completely backwards even. Why on earth does that happen? Well, this slide right here gets to the absolute core of the issue. It all comes down to two totally different mindsets. First, you've got the executor mindset. This is where most of us live, right? You see a problem and your brain immediately jumps to, okay, how do I fix this thing right now? The goal is just to get the task done. But the project manager mindset, the one that PMI is actually testing you on, sees that exact same problem and asks, hang on, what's the correct process here? What's the bigger impact? The goal isn't just to fix the immediate fire, it's to protect the entire project. To pass that exam and to really nail those interviews, you have got to unlock the PMI logic. It's a very specific way of thinking they're looking for, and I promise you, once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. So let's break down how these questions are actually put together. Pretty much every tricky PMP question follows the same formula. Step 1, they'll give you a real-world scenario. Something like, a critical material delivery is late to your construction site. Step 2, they add the pressure. Maybe the client is freaking out and demanding you use some unapproved alternative to stay on schedule. And then step 3, here comes the real question. It's almost always some version of, what is the first thing you should do? See, they're not testing if you know the final fix. They're testing if you know the correct, professional, first step in the process. So how do you always know what that correct first step is? Well, this is it. This is your master key. This is the secret weapon for pretty much any scenario question they can throw at you. On the exam or in an interview, we're going to call it the manager's golden rule. And here it is. This is the process. Let's use that late material delivery example. Before you do anything, your first move is to analyze. What's the root cause of the delay? Step 2, you review. You pull up the procurement plan, the contract. What are the terms? What did we agree on? Step 3, you communicate. You get on the phone with the supplier and the client to manage their expectations based on what you now know. Only after all that, as step 4, do you formally decide what to do. And finally, step 5, you document everything. The issue, the decision, the action plan. This 5-step order, this needs to become your new instinct. Now, let's look at the flip side, the traps that so many of us fall into. That gut reaction to fix the problem immediately. That's trap number 1. Or thinking, this is a huge mess, I'm just going to escalate it to my boss right away. That's usually a trap too. You're paid to manage, not just pass the buck. Implementing a change before it's approved or, just skipping the paperwork, all traps. They're designed to catch you thinking like an executor, not a manager. Okay, theory is great. Let's start applying this golden rule to some real topics. First up, methodology. How does this decision framework help you choose between using a predictive, agile, or hybrid approach for a project? So the PMI logic is super clear here. The project's context is king. Your first step is to analyze the nature of the project itself. Is the scope really well defined with very little uncertainty? Think about a big MEP or construction project. You need the full blueprint up front, right? That's a classic case for a predictive approach. Now, what if the scope is guaranteed to change and there's a ton of uncertainty, like in software development? That's screaming agile. And if you've got a mix of both, say a project with hardware and software components, hybrid is probably your best bet. You analyze the context first, then you choose the tool. And here's a little something for your next interview. When they ask about your preferred methodology, here's your killer answer. I tailor the project approach based on its specific complexity and level of uncertainty. Boom. That one sentence shows you're a strategic thinker, not just someone who knows a buzzword. All right, let's use our golden rule on what is probably the single most tested topic on the entire PMP exam, change control. PMI is obsessed with this, and for good reason. It's where projects go off the rails. They want to see that you value process over pure speed. And look how perfectly this process aligns with our golden rule. Let's say a client on an EPC project asks for a big change to the HVAC system spec. The PMP angle is knowing your first move isn't to call the supplier or get a quote. No, your first step is to analyze the full impact of that change on the cost, on the schedule, on MEP coordination, everything. Then you present that analysis for formal approval. Once it's approved, you update all the project documents, and only then do you actually implement the change. It's a clear, logical sequence. And guess what? This same logic applies everywhere else, especially when it comes to quality and stakeholders. The theme is always the same. You follow the process instead of just rushing to fix a problem, and you manage the people involved, not just the tasks on your to-do list. So, let's take a quality issue. A weld inspection fails on site. What's the very first thing you do? The exam answer is not re-weld it. The correct first step is to consult the quality management plan and follow the documented process for raising a non-conformance report, or an NCR. Remember this: quality assurance, which is the process, always comes before quality control, which is the inspection and fixing. And for stakeholders, if there's a disagreement, your first step is to identify everyone who is impacted and communicate with them early and formally. Because here's a rule to live by: people issues, if you ignore them, will always turn into project risks. And here is another absolute gem for your next interview. When they ask you how you deal with difficult stakeholders, you can say, "My philosophy is to manage stakeholders proactively before I manage tasks." That is a senior level answer that shows you get the big picture. Okay, let's tackle risk and ethics. With these two, the mindset is all about being proactive instead of reactive and valuing transparency above absolutely everything else. For PMI, this stuff is not optional. The typical engineer's mindset is often reactive. We have a problem, how do I solve it? The project manager's mindset is proactive. How can I prevent this problem from ever even happening? The PMP exam will always reward the proactive thinker. They want to see that you identify risks, you analyze their probability and impact, you plan a response, and you assign an owner. All of that before they blow up into actual issues. And when it comes to ethics, honestly, PMI has made it super simple for us. Transparency is mandatory. Full stop. If you find a minor safety issue on site, the answer is never, ever to cover it up or fix it quietly. You report it and you document it. If a question gives you 4 choices and one of them just feels like the most ethical, transparent thing to do, it is almost guaranteed to be the right answer. Okay, let's pull all of this together. How do you actually use this manager's mindset to completely dominate your next interview? It's all about turning your experience into a story that just screams managerial thinking. A fantastic way to structure your answers is the classic STAR method. First, you briefly describe the situation. Then, you explain the specific task you were responsible for. Now, the action part. This is where the magic happens. You detail the steps you took using that PMI-aligned decision order we've been talking about. First, I analyze the impact. Next, I review the project plan. And finally, you describe the positive result that came from your structured, thoughtful actions. It tells a much more powerful story. So, if you only take one single thing away from all of this, let it be this sentence. This is your new mantra. Say it before the exam. Say it before an interview. It wraps up the entire managerial mindset. Just repeat it to yourself. I analyze first, communicate early, decide formally, and document always. This way of thinking isn't just the key to the PMP exam, it's the key to interview success and ultimately to real project success.